and welcome back to another video. My name is Steph, and in this video I'm gonna just be talking through the 13 books that I read in February. So this month felt like very short, but when I look back at the books that I read at the very beginning of the month, I feel like I read them a year ago. So I'm gonna be relying on my notes quite a bit for the first few ones. And I feel like I read pretty broadly across genre. A few things kind of tested my comfort zone, which was interesting, like everything from cosmic horror to accidentally stumbling across the Omegaverse. So it was pretty interesting. I will begin with number 1, which is Looking Glass Sound. So I feel like the back cover of this book pretty much tells you absolutely everything that happens up to like the 85% mark. I would definitely advise you not to read the back. And I'm only going to talk about the first kind of section and overall idea of it. In this we follow Wilder, beginning with a section of his memoir, recounting a time when he was a teenager, like 16 or 17, and he's holidaying with his family in his uncle's cabin, who recently passed away. He's a really awkward child, and he has a very strained family dynamic. So when he meets 2 other kids around his age, he's really excited to have friends for the first time and have a relationship with Nat and Harper. Then there's this other piece during that summer when they're there, where there's a guy called the Dagger Man who breaks into people's houses and takes pictures of his hand like holding a knife to a child's throat. And then he leaves like these Polaroid pictures depicting this at people's door to show like, I've been in your house, I have access to your children. So like, I guess like around the 30% mark, we kind of come to understand or discover who the Dagger Man is. And that was the part of the book that really captured me and was very interesting. But then there is a pretty big shift in the book because we then jump forward to see Wilder when he's older, and like kind of how that time period in his life continues to affect him. There is like a continued element of suspense and horror that kind of continues like to come up. There's a lot more going on in this than just that, but if I tell you anymore, it will spoil it for you. So yeah, in the beginning, I loved the dark, spooky atmosphere of this. I love a coastal town that is haunted by either ghosts or by people, and Wilder was kind of an interesting character to follow as well because he had a lot of like internal image issues and a lot of kind of repressed emotions and like things just going on inside of him that made me kind of question how reliable he actually is. But by the 60% mark, I really lost interest. I kept reading, hoping for that big twist, but I just never really felt like I got it because I know what happens on the back already. It just felt very disappointing to read like 200 pages of premise before we actually got to the big story. And then there were some things that I just felt were not necessarily woven together very smoothly. Like I found the transition between Wilder in his memoir when he's younger to when he's older very challenging to follow and become invested in. So that's Looking Glass Sound. It was a really nice atmosphere, but otherwise a pretty disappointing read for me. So I followed that up with Mrs. Caliban. This is a really great short magical realism novel or novella from 1982. After I've read it now, I'm pretty sure that it at least inspired Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water. That was a film that I absolutely loved, and so I really enjoyed reading this book. So Mrs. Caliban is a woman who is married and she's feeling really lonely and kind of apathetic about her life. Her husband is cheating on her and he's just generally not a great guy, not a great partner. Until one day, a sort of man amphibian shows up at her door, who she literally calls the Frogman. He's, yeah, like a creature that has human intelligence, and he has escaped from a research institution, like an oceans, rivers, kind of like research institution. And do you guys want to know what this guy's name is? I love it. It's hilarious. So drum roll. It's Larry. It's Larry the Frogman, and I loved this so much. I thought it was the weirdest thing. So anyway, she kind of takes compassion on this creature. She takes him in and has him in the house secret from her husband. Her husband is like so out of touch and out of tune with her and the relationship and like just everything. He doesn't even notice that there's a giant frogman living in the spare bedroom. But this relationship between them ends up kind of being super freeing and just incredible for both of them. You know, this is not a monster smut. It is much more like a commentary on society and women. And if you like a kind of ambiguous ending, this has that for you as well. When I got to the end, I was first of all really surprised by the direction that it went to, all of the threads kind of coming together and tying into this sort of sad, not sad, happy, like bittersweet, cataclysmic conclusion. And I was really left questioning the reality of the characters and the whole book. I feel like this might appeal to people who are interested in Ottessa Moshfegh or Mona Awad. Like, it's a very different kind of book, but there are kind of similarities in some of the characters and the type of drama and the way that magical realism is used. But I just got like way more from this than I was expecting. I think I found potentially a new favorite author. I really want to look at more that Rachel Ingalls has published. She's done a few other novellas and like 1 or 2 full-length novels. But yeah, great surprise. Highly recommend Mrs. Caliban. Next up, I read a book with the book club that is hosted by Maddie Moon's Library and Brooklyn's Library. That is The Fake Mate. Now, I was very excited about this. Initially, I do really enjoy paranormal, and I'm kind of excited and intrigued to see that potentially coming back, and this looked kind of fresh in having like a bit of a rom-com-y spin on it. Oh my god, this book. Okay, I will start with a premise. It's 2 doctors. They're fake dating for romance reasons. And like, it's in a world where everybody knows there's werewolves. The main characters are werewolves. And they are just kind of in society. But it's very problematic for alphas to become part of society and hold certain jobs because they're kind of explosive and unpredictable and like blah. Some people kind of describe this as like romance with like some Grey's Anatomy and werewolves all mashed together. But the thing that they forgot to mention is Omegaverse. Yeah. So I'm not going to explain what that is. You can Google it. Don't Google it at work. But I had no idea like what was going on when a certain anatomy part was mentioned. And I had to like look up a graph, like, or like an illustration from fanfiction. This is something that has kind of come through fanfiction. I don't think that it's really part of any other paranormal romance in the past. I don't remember that. But yeah, Google at your own risk. This had a lot of Omegaverse stuff in it. It was very spicy. It was okay. Like, for the spice, like, I could have done without it. You know, Omegaverse is not my thing, I have discovered. So in the beginning, it was like kind of entertaining and fun, but then there was like 40% of the book, the latter half of the 40% until like 10%, where it's sort of like the author was like, oh, we need to wrap it up, where it was just like Bone Town. And that kind of lost tension for me because I didn't feel like there was any real reason for the characters to not be together. I like torment. Like, I want them to suffer. I'm not interested in romantic books being particularly happy. So that's The Fake Mate. I don't really have a whole lot of other things to say about it. I think I might be the only person in the book club who finished it. And I really finished it out of obligation, so that's that. Okay, the next book that I read was Dowry of Blood. I read this for my horror romance reading vlog right before Valentine's Day, because I realized I don't really want or enjoy dark romance. And I don't want something that is so heavy on the romance that there's no plot. I want a good plot, and I want it to be a little scary or like tense, which is part of why I tend to like Gothic so much. So this follows a woman who has been turned into a vampire and basically lives alongside her husband, who is kind of coded as Dracula. And we know from the get-go that she has betrayed him. She has decided to turn against him. The relationship was abusive, and she's kind of recounting this to her husband, almost like a letter, but it's not written like a letter, where she is just explaining her experience out of the relationship and her, you know, from falling in love and being transformed and then coming across like other people that he kind of brought into his harem. and her relationships with them, and then, eventually the disintegration and whatever her ultimate decision is, which is revealed at the end. I loved this. I thought that the prose was absolutely stunning, and I really enjoyed the premise. It was quite short and to the point. I think that, it's important to know that there is not going to be an overwhelming amount of plot. A lot of it is very driven by her emotions, as I kind of explained. There is sort of a queer relationship with the other people with the harem, because it's not just her relationship with him. Some of her experience is also being informed with her romantic relationship with the other people that they kind of pick up together as they go along. There's like 2 others. So a bit of a queer twist on Dracula's brides, I guess. Yeah, that's Dowry of Blood. I don't want to spoil it. I'll link the vlog below where I give a little bit more information about it, but I thought this was a really wonderful book, and I'm excited to read more from S.T. Gibson. Following that, I read the new release, Your Shadow Half Remains. And I didn't help my future self at all. This was also, okay, because in my notes for it, I wrote meh, and that's it. So I read this for the vlog again as well, so if you want more than meh, you can go check out my reading experience in greater detail, linked down below. From what I remember, Your Shadow Half Remains is a post-apocalyptic, sort of post-pandemic book that was released this month. We follow our main girl, what is her name? Riley. So we follow our main girl, Riley, and Riley is living alone. This is very much isolation horror. There has been this sort of pandemic-y disease thing where if people make eye contact, they kind of go insane and like kill each other. So one day, Riley gets a neighbor, and them showing up kind of causes a lot of things to come up for Riley about how this pandemic thing began, how it proceeded, how it affected her relationships. All the while, there is this really strong draw to her neighbor, and she's finding that she really wants to look at them in the eye. She wants to see their face. You begin to see how her grip on reality begins to slip, or maybe already slipped. Yeah, I just have a very bland impression of it, and I think I was hoping for, I don't know, I didn't love it. I think some of that was maybe that it just wasn't my thing, but if you like isolation horror, then you might want to check this out, because I can definitely see it really appealing to some people, and I thought the prose was really easy to read, but really engaging as well. Okay, after that, I read a non-fiction that is Romantic Outlaws. This is a biography of Mary Shelley and Mary Wollstonecraft, and I'm not gonna lie, it is like 600 pages, and it took me the entire month to read. I am personally a lot more interested in Mary Shelley. I really love Frankenstein. It's one of my favorite books, but I have it on my shelf. I have a very nice copy of the Vindication of the Rights of Women that I really love this. I really love this book, but that I really want to read. It's sort of like feminist philosophy, I guess. So if you don't know, Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, was the daughter of a very famous feminist philosopher. And this is like one of the very first biographies that is kind of recounting both of their lives. So you get like one chapter of Mary Shelley, one chapter of Mary Wollstonecraft, alternating in a pretty linear fashion from birth to death. My greatest critique or challenge with this book, while I loved how it was written, I loved the stories of both women, I was really hoping that if you're gonna have a biography of 2 people, that it wouldn't be like reading separate books and alternating chapters. I wanted a little bit more synthesis between like analyzing like how they influenced each other's lives, but a lot of that is left to the reader. So it was an enjoyable read, but yeah, I would have loved to get a little bit more dialogue between the 2 of them. But it was really interesting to see how, particularly during Mary Shelley's life, everyone was kind of fascinated and enamored with her just based on the fact that she was Mary Wollstonecraft's daughter. And so she always grew up with this sense of being kind of special, being called in some ways to be a writer and to be a thinker. A lot of connections for her kind of came a bit more easily because people were so intrigued to know the daughter of this great woman. And it was also very interesting to me to see to see her mother developing these ideas about how should a daughter be raised, how should women be treated within society, is marriage a useful construct? Contrasted with Mary Shelley, kind of around the same age, where she's trying to live out her interpretation of her mother's ideas, and that doesn't always go very well for her, or it makes her life really challenging. Also, to see how it kind of enabled her to have enormous creative freedom, which she probably wouldn't have otherwise had. And I think it's kind of funny, you know, when we're young and we get ideas about how the world should be that are often informed or interpreted through immaturity, and you can really see that in Mary Shelley's life, I think, in the way particularly that this book was structured. So I thought that that was just a very interesting aspect and observation to make. But also, as somebody who likes to write in her spare time and is really interested in the creative process, I felt very encouraged by seeing how long it actually took Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein, because I feel like we often hear this story of like her and Byron and her husband Percy Shelley, like in this Italian manner, and they are like challenging each other to write a ghost story. And it actually took her like almost a year to write Frankenstein, after many months and even years prior being exposed to information and research and other creative sources that kind of informed a lot of her ideas in the original book. Like, it was nice to kind of actually chart her creative process, to see that like, oh, she didn't pen this thing in, 6 hours or something. This was actually a labor that she devoted an enormous amount of time to, and I cannot imagine making edits and not having a backspace key. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a great biography. It was the first biography that I've read of either women. I just wish that they were in dialogue with one another a little bit more to offer something a little bit more new or fresh. All right, the next book that I want to talk about is The Dead Take the A Train. This is written by Cassandra Khaw and Richard Cadre, and I am not familiar with Cadre's work, but I did read The Salt Grows Heavy last year, and I adored that book. I really enjoyed the prose. This was a very different kind of book, okay? If I could summarize like what this is like, it's more of a Rachel Harrison kind of tone, where it's sort of funny and comical and snarky, following a woman who probably has some issues, but like with a lot of tentacles. I think this is one of the first cosmic horrors that I've actually read, except for maybe Lovecraft many years ago. And I tend to not find cosmic very scary. It's pretty over the top and out there for me. So I would usually approach it or think of it more as like sci-fi or fantasy. So this is like a kitchen sink of cosmic monsters in an alternate New York. So everybody knows there's monsters, they're all over the place. And we follow Julie, who is a half Korean, coke snorting magical lady that is low-key in love with her best friend. That's all you need to really know. Just kidding. When I think about this book, it felt like there was a ton of stuff going on, but nothing really happening. Like, Julie gets pulled into killing this monster for her ex-boyfriend, who has kind of lied to her, and he has to kill the monster because there's like a monster he works for that says he has to kill the monster, and it's like gonna kill him if he tries to kill it. And so he tries to get his ex-girlfriend to kill it because that's kind of her job. She sort of slays monsters. And then her best friend comes back and she's having like emotional things about her best friend, and then they're getting deeper and deeper into this stuff, and we're following other characters who are doing... I loved the writing voice and the style. I will be honest, I don't think I will personally follow the series because I didn't realize it was a series. I thought it was a standalone, and then I got to the end and I'm like, oh. But I will be honest, there were chunks that I skimmed. Wait, okay, my notes say it wraps up fairly well, but I don't think I'll probably continue with it. It was just too much for me. Yeah, that was a very chaotic review. I feel like I didn't say a whole lot, but I said a lot very quickly, and that's kind of what the book felt like. So, The Dead Take the A Train. If you like cosmic horror and Rachel Harrison, fun, snarky main character, and a sapphic romance, maybe you would like it more than I did. The next 3 books I'm going to talk about together because they are part of a series. I binge read Daughter of No Worlds and its sequels. I'm so happy that I came across this series and that they were all released and I could just go fly through them, because I feel like I had a lot of duds actually in February. When I'm looking back at this, I know it's really easy to pick out the books that I enjoyed because there were so many that I didn't really. So I listened to these on audio. I was like making food and realized my face hurts because I'm smiling so much because I'm enjoying this book so much. But in it we follow Tisana, who when we first meet her has a little bit of magic. She is a dancer and she's also mixed. So she is from like this one ethnic group that has a specific type of magic, and that makes her very valuable as a slave. She has something, I think you would call it vitiligo. I don't know if that's correct, but where you have different patches, like patches of skin that are different shades on your body. And she kind of refers to herself as the fractured girl, which, you know, is a reference to being mixed and not really being in either world. And also, you know, of course, referring to her experience, like just as a person going through a huge amount of trauma and continues to through the book. So her kind of agenda is that she wants to be free. Obviously, she's like 18 and she has been dancing and, you know, doing other things to get money so she can basically buy her own freedom from her master. When she attempts to do this, her master kind of reveals that he was never planning to accept this money because he set first in like an exorbitant amount of money, saying like you're worth 1,000 whatever. Then he tries to kill her for escaping and for leaving him, and she ends up surviving that. She uses like some of her special powers to kill him, and then she has to flee because she just killed her master. So she flees. She goes to this land where she is going to begin to train with her magic and hopefully get the support of other people to go back and free all of the slaves, because her best friend and like people that she loves are back at home. So that is like the very initial premise. That's like the first 50 pages or something of the book. There is a huge amount that happens. I would describe this as fantasy with a romantic subplot. It's definitely a little bit lower on the fantasy than The Serpent and Wings of Night, which this author also wrote, because when she goes to this other place to train, of course, the only person who's available to train her is a very attractive, extremely grumpy man who has left the military and has a lot of like mental wounds and scars and secrets from the past. And this is a very slow burn romance, and I loved it so much. Like that angst and the suffering and the emotional pain and distress and uncertainty and unhappiness that I told you I like in romances, this had all of those things. There was just so many points where I was like, okay guys, it's time to kiss. Like, you just kiss now. And yeah, it was very fun. It took a bit of a twist that I was not expecting at all, and I really, really enjoyed it. Book 2 was amazing. Book 3 was great. It expanded in a way that I feel was really risky. Like, I really can't share any spoilers, but I think that she pulled it off incredibly well. I just don't know if it needed to be 700 pages, maybe. Another thing, I was absolutely thrilled with how gory this book is. I think that the covers, like, I like the covers. They kind of look a little bit like an RPG character, like gaming lit thing, which I don't read, but like I like them. But I don't know if they accurately sell the book. Like there's way more gore and violence and war and scheming and than the first cover might give you the impression of. Maybe the other books kind of, you know, do a little bit better there, but I think the emphasis is like on like beautiful girl doing things with swords, and I don't really, I don't know if I would like say that's like completely the genre of this book. But yeah, I loved it. I think it's a great series for anybody who is wanting to maybe get into fantasy romance or even just romance, because there is such a strong fantasy plot in there as well, that you get the romantic elements that you're looking for. It's a great romance story, but there's like a lot of other stuff going on. It's not necessarily even always the core story or the core drive for the characters. This month, I also read a great thriller that is First Lie Wins. This might require a little bit of a suspension of disbelief. Like there's some things and like some plot holes, but like I feel like I would prefer something that is really gripping and interesting and have to suspend my disbelief a little bit for a thriller than have kind of the same plot over and over and over again. So we are following a woman named Evie Porter, and she has just started to get more serious with this boyfriend, and she's about to move into his house. And then we quickly realize that Evie Porter is not who she says she is. She is kind of infiltrating this guy's life for a reason, for her boss, for her job. She's undercover and it's not for the government. And even she doesn't know why her boss wants anything from this guy. She doesn't even know what he wants. She gets this information delivered at like very small like amounts as she proceeds with her task. So already that is very interesting and exciting. But the plot thickens when she meets a young woman who is also kind of infiltrating this guy's friend's life and is around. And this woman looks just like her. The biggest thing is that she is going by the name of Evie Porter's real identity. So I love thrillers that follow like a con woman. I'm finding that I kind of prefer that a little bit more lately over like a domestic thriller. I feel like anybody who enjoys maybe Frida McFadden's writing style would enjoy this. The pacing is super fast. I really read it in like 2 or 3 sittings. It was very quick. And I just thought it was really well executed. It was a very fun book. Every bit of information that you get along the way, like every single bit, ends up becoming critical to the finale, which always just gives me such a satisfying feeling. Like you just can't really see where it's going until you finally get there, and then everything just unfolds beautifully. So that's The First Lie Wins. I really enjoyed it. It was a bit more of a fresh thriller for me. I think it's a newer release as well. Yeah, good book. The last book that I read in February was The Invocations. Now this was one of my most anticipated reads. I have a vlog where I am reading this book and I give more of my thoughts in depth that will be coming out next week, but I enjoyed this a lot. Invocations follows 3 women. Zara Jones, who is a teenager and trying to find a way to resurrect her dead sister. Then we meet Jude Wolfe, who is trying to be a witch. Like her soul has gone necrotic because she's kind of done like a bad DIY job with the magic. So like her legs are rotting and like she's just like kind of gross, and around her flowers and ants and stuff like that die. And then Emmer Byrne, I have a feeling this is an Irish name that I'm mispronouncing. She is a real witch. She is a woman who creates curses or these invocations for other women, and she kind of has her own dark and kind of sad past in history that she's running from because it might want to kill her. These 3 women are brought together and decide to sort of team up in order to hunt down a serial killer who seems to be hunting witches. And yeah, so it's a very different kind of book from House of Hollow. I would say this is more of a feminist narrative because only women can be witches and men hunt them, and you can kind of see the kind of commentary that was going on there, but I overall still really enjoyed it. I thought that it was very entertaining. My main critique of the book was probably that it was tough to follow 3 different characters and become invested in all of them with the page count and this type of story. And the final twist, like I just feel like if we had a little bit more, it would have been more satisfying. I think that considering all of that, she actually did a really great job still. And yeah, if you like witches, you like feminist, YA horror, I'm assuming it's here. The Invocations is for you. Check it out. I hope you enjoy it. And that's the last book that I read this month. So if you made it to this point in the video, thank you for watching, and I would love to hear about the books that you have read during the month of February, and let me know if you've read any of the books that I talked about and what your thoughts are, or if any of the books intrigue you. Tell me all about it. But otherwise, I hope you guys have a great day, afternoon, morning, wherever you are, whenever you are, and yeah, thanks for watching. Bye!